Welcome to the Rebuilt Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Sykes. Each week, I sit down with people who have faced life's toughest challenges and come out victorious, along with mental health experts, coaches, and leaders. We explore powerful stories of transformation, faith, and practical strategies for building a life of purpose and resilience. This is the Rebuilt Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Rebuilt Podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we sat down with Chip Huth, and let me tell you, it was an engaging conversation. He's a seasoned leader in SWAT operations, and now he's a consultant in leadership development. Join us as Chip shares his journey from leading the busiest SWAT team in the nation to helping organizations transform their culture. We explore everything from the power of perspective, the importance of empathy, and how understanding human connections can really drive positive change. In the end of this episode, we dive real deep and personal into our own stories. It reveals the transformation, power, and vulnerability and just resilience of how we became who we are. We get to share some really cool and intense stories along the way. It's very entertaining and it's very powerful. I'm so excited for you to listen to it. Let's jump in. Hey, Chip, thanks for being on today.
Hey, thanks, Jason. It's great to spend some time with you.
Yeah. So, busy season for you. How have things been?
Things have been interesting, for sure. In my current business, leadership development, leadership and culture change, the government shutdowns have affected us, causing some contention with our clients and things like that. We're having to juggle a lot, but busy but good. How about you? How are things?
Oh, very, very busy. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Keeps me busy, keeps me safe. Can't get in trouble that way. So, but
Are you someone that's inclined to get in trouble? Or you don't seem like someone to me that would cause a lot of trouble. You seem pretty like you're pretty mellow. I don't know. Am I misreading you?
In my earlier days, I have more of a wild side in me, but no, I'm definitely more tame. My wife can take the credit for that one.
Well, express my gratitude. Express gratitude on my behalf because obviously we want you to be tame. So
there you go. Well, hey, for those who don't know Chip Huth, why don't you just kind of give us a brief intro of who you are, what you do?
Starting way back, I guess I'll keep this brief, but I went in the Army at 17, became a police officer at 21, served 30 years. As a police officer, my expertise was building and leading SWAT teams. I led the busiest SWAT team in the nation for over a decade at the tactical level.
That's awesome.
I've written some things. I've published book. I've published some other things. I've been around the world, basically teaching everything from tactics to leadership. I retired after 30 years from police work, and now I work full-time for the Arbinger Institute, which is a international leadership consultancy. We help organizations change culture, and I just spend my time traveling around the globe, really, doing leadership development, executive coaching, delivering workshops, things like that. So that's me in a nutshell. I reside full-time these days in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay. That's awesome. And I'm sure with all your experience, you have quite a lot to teach these companies about good culture.
Well, I'm learning too. That's the thing, Jason. I'm sure you know this.
Oh, yeah.
With in your experience as well, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not teaching so much as facilitating. Like I think the power of a coach isn't what you know, it's in what you see. And because I can adopt a different perspective from outside the organization, I'm often able to pick up on things that people that are immersed in it day to day don't see. Like it just becomes normative, right? Like if you've got dysfunction in your organization and you're showing up there every day and you're trying to accomplish a mission, you end up finding these workarounds. You find there's compensatory mechanisms that you adopt that allow you to operate and succeed despite all the friction, the unnecessary friction that's there. You just don't see it anymore. It's like a fish in water, right?
Yeah.
Like what's water to a fish? And I think when someone like myself comes in from the outside, isn't that we're brilliant necessarily. It's that we have a different perspective. And because I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at it through a different lens, I'm able to probably pull some things to the surface that are probably long buried. And then we can once we can do that, we can then start really critically analyzing them. I think in a nutshell that would explain kind of the power behind bringing somebody from the outside into your organization. Because look, and spoiler alert, like I think the people in the organization have the answer to all the problems they're experiencing. It's just that their collective mindset, self-concern, isolation, siloing, all those things that occur in a dysfunctional culture, that mindset keeps those solutions from surfacing. They just don't have access to them. So I
Yeah.
don't know, but that's what I think.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love it. The outside perspective, it really does notice things. It kind of reminds me of, I do engineering by trade. And when you look at something for so long, that's why we have a process of quality control. When you're done with it, you pass it on, the next guy sees it. Um, Lots of times, you might be looking at something for hours. Okay, it's good to go. And then the next guy's like, that's wrong. It's like, why didn't I see that? It's like, well, because you've been looking at it, you've been over critiquing it. Somebody else with a fresh set of eyes comes in. That's that outside perspective.
Yeah, you're on the wrong side of your eyeballs, Jason. And so am I, right? And so am I. That's the thing, right? We're also biased as human beings. But if I can build the type of culture or the type of friendship, let's say between you and I, to where you are empowered to give me critical feedback and to, give me the unvarnished truth as you see it, we can both grow. We can both
Mm,
benefit from that. But we have to create the environment in which that feels safe. You've probably seen cultures in your work, I know I have, in which people didn't feel free to share their perspective. And so they just kept it to themselves, or maybe it manifests in kind of gossiping offline, but it never really became part of the out loud conversation.
hmm Yeah. And I think a lot of this also translates not just from companies and corporations, but also as individuals, right?
Oh, without a doubt. I think organizations are just a collection of individuals, right? We just
Yeah.
all come together. We all rally around a common mission. That's the idea. We come together. We're stronger when we're together. But look, we're together even when we're not in an organization together. We're always together. Every person is every other person. I believe this. I think we're all inextricably woven together in this fabric we call humanity. We're just connected, one person to another. Like we're not in this alone. And yeah, there's nothing I can do in my day to day that doesn't affect other people. From the way I drive to where I choose to eat, right? To the attitude that I have with the person that might be experiencing some difficulty. Everything I do, every contact I have with every single human being is an opportunity to build or destroy trust, to build or destroy relationship. That's how I think about humanity anyway. So to your point, like I think like the way I show up with you as my friend really informs the way I show up with people generally. I am who I am, right? I am who I am. Who I am is who I am with other people.
Mm,
That's what I think anyway.
yeah. No, that's really good. And so in your time in the SWAT and as a cop, um, was there a lot of times when you did negotiations with people?
So that is actually a specialty within SWAT,
Hmm.
kind of an adjunct unit.
Hmm.
Um, so I was never a negotiator. One of my brothers, all my family were in law enforcement at one point in time, all my siblings, but My brother Vern is actually a trained negotiator. So I'll set it up for kind of how it worked on our team, because some teams, most SWAT teams are multi-jurisdictional. Most police agencies are relatively small, 50 personnel and under. Larger organizations like the one I worked for in New York, LA, and the big cities, they have the privilege of having full-time standing SWAT teams that are properly resourced and equipped and staffed. But most SWAT teams in the United States, they are kind of pulled together from different organizations, maybe different elements that they'll come together when there's a SWAT call out, or
Yep.
it could be a sheriff's agency with a police department and another police department, right? And they've got all of these different folks from different organizations that come together when needed. So they don't have, saying that to say this, that's a long answer to say you're not wrong in the sense that some of those SWAT teams are trained in all of the dimensions of special operations to include negotiations. So you might have someone on the entry team who is also a negotiator. But in my world, we have specialists. So the hostage negotiation team was a separate unit from the SWAT team. And we would work in conjunction with them on a barricade or on a hostage taker, a situation where someone taking hostages, or sometimes a suicidal person who was maybe threatened to jump off a bridge or a building. We would work in conjunction with the negotiators, but I myself only ever negotiated one time, and that was out of necessity until a negotiator could get to me and relieve me from that duty. So, yeah.
Can you tell us about that time?
Yeah, I can actually. It was there was a gentleman who was standing on an overpass, went over a highway, actually I-35 highway that runs right through your town, I do believe.
Yeah,
there in Tulsa, and he's standing over that overpass on the outside of the what would you call it, like the gate, the fencing that would keep people from being able to fall over the side of it. Well, he's climbed on the outside of that. So he is now exposing himself to about a 80-foot fall down onto the pavement, and he's threatening to jump. I'm driving down the road and I roll up on this. I just see him standing out there. I get out. Hey, what's going on? He tells me he's going to jump. And he says,
and he had no idea that
if you don't find
a cop, right?
Well, no, he was no. As a matter of fact, I wasn't responding to a call. I was in an unmarked SWAT car. I mean, it's unmarked, but you see these Dodge Chargers that are all right decked out. I mean, yeah, it's unmarked, but at the same time,
Gotcha.
If you're paying attention. But no, he was already out there. He was already preparing.
Yeah.
For what he was going to do, and I just happened to roll up on it. So I get out, and I immediately just start trying to connect with him a little bit. Like, hey, I could tell. My intuition told me this is a potential suicidal person. And again, I started talking to him, and he said, hey, look, I'm going to jump. If you don't get my girlfriend and bring her up here right now so I can talk to her, I'm going to jump. And I said, hey, can you tell me more about what's going on? And he kept saying, look, don't play with me. He goes, check my record. I've done it before.
Wow.
And when he said that, he said, check my record. I've done it before. I was kind of like, done it before? Like you jumped off a bridge? Like before? And now we're still having this conversation? Like it didn't really hit me at first, right? I started processing that. But I remember I knew enough about negotiation that when he said, you get my girlfriend to bring her up here or I'm going to jump, I said, let me get to work on that. And I'm calling more officers over. They're coming over. I said, who is your girlfriend? Where is she at? He's telling me all her name and everything like that. And so I said, okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to send this officer. So I go over and I find this young officer and I said, I want you to go find this lady. She's at this address. And whatever you do, keep her far away from here. Do not let her come anywhere near here. You sit on her till this is resolved. And the reason I said that was that I knew enough about these situations to know as soon as she got there, he was going to jump in front of her. That was his purpose for wanting her to be there, was because she could see him jump. Wow. And that's what I intuited, right? Yeah, I know, right? And so I that was the one decision I felt pretty good about, that, I was pretty confident that, that was the right call. And, so I just started kind of delaying him. I said, "Look, they're trying to find her while they're looking for her. Can we just talk? Can we just chat?" And at first he was kind of, standoffish. And of course I've
Mhm.
called for a negotiator and I'm waiting. He's really, it's precarious. He's out there on the edge, kind of letting go with one hand, switching hands. And, I did have them stop all the traffic on the highway, of course, and we rerouted all that. So it's just, nothing but air between him and the pavement, about, like I said, an 80-foot fall. And we're just talking. And I think I'm building a pretty good rapport with him. We're just having conversation, and we're just talking like you and I are talking. No general direction of the conversation. Every once in a while, I might suggest, "Hey, do you think if you came over back off the on this side of the fencing, we could keep talking. We don't have to stop talking." And he really wasn't going for that. He kept asking where she was. As they're still looking for her. And I faked like I was calling on the phone. Like I was fake talking, like, "Hey, have you found her yet?" "No, no, no." He said, "North. Ask you north." "No,
Mm.
that's not the right." No. And I was like really kind of playing it up, right? Like there's a delay. So the negotiator gets there, and I'm thinking, okay, I can hand this baby off to the professionals. And I kind of do. We transition. I introduce the negotiator, and we're standing by the edge, and he's let us come pretty close to him now. And he finally just gets fed up at some point, and starts getting really irate. And then there are people that have gathered way off the perimeter, and they're yelling things at him. And he finally says, "She's not coming. She's not coming. You guys are jerking me around." And he just looks at me, and he just lets go and does like, you probably aren't old enough, Jason, to remember the Nestea plunge, but there used to be, there was a tea, a beverage, iced tea, and the brand name was Nestea. And
Mm.
on the commercials back in the day, they had the Nestea plunge, and people would just like fall backward with their hands spread into water or something on these commercials. You can Google this. You can Google this. It's worth a look. You'll never forget it. You can't unsee it. Can't unsee it. So he does this off the bridge, and he goes off the bridge, and just this resigned look on his face. And the negotiator and I walked over and looked over the bridge. It's like reflexively you're going to go look, right? Like, we go look over the bridge, like maybe there's some chance that he didn't hit the pavement, or that he's alive. But we look over, and he is laying right on the freeway, just as dead as you would expect him to be in a situation like that. And I remember the negotiator looked at me, and just this horrified look on his face. And he said, "I've never lost one before." And he just
Wow.
had this horrified look on his face, and it just hit me. This negotiator, he's dealing with this stuff all the time. He's talking to people in crisis all the time. And
Gosh.
so to kind of wrap that story up, not a happy ending, uh, but to wrap it up, I went back and I was curious about what he had said. Check my record. I've done it before. So I went back, we did some digging. He had jumped off that very same bridge 2 years before and landed on a car that was in transit on the highway, bounced off into another truck and then onto the pavement and broke his leg.
Wow.
So he had literally jumped off that bridge and survived, and ended up going to the hospital and having surgeries and things like that. It survived to jump another day. Like that was his second attempt at killing
Wow.
himself by jumping off that bridge. So that's my only. I'm 0 for 1 when it comes to negotiating with people in crisis. I'm not the guy you want to send in, I don't think, if you've got a crisis.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I initially asked about the negotiation because, in your line of work, you see things like this frequently. And the human condition, in order to understand someone, in order to talk to them, I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on mentality wise, how do you understand what somebody's going through enough to hopefully help them?
Yeah, and I think I know more now than I did then as a younger SWAT officer. I think I've learned more now over the course of thousands and thousands of conversations with people.
Hmm.
Not negotiating, but just being with them, right? Just being present
Yeah.
with them. And I think that there's a lot of talk about, especially in the leadership space, about empathy and the power of empathy. And what I would say about that is, there's a dark side to empathy. Empathy can be very powerful, but it can also be very debilitating. Empathy can cause people sometimes to adopt the feelings or the perspectives of the person they're trying to help. Like you just get down there with them in that gloom, and it can
Yeah.
seem like you're actually sharing in their hopelessness, which isn't helpful to anybody. But in my experience, I think what we're calling for is compassion, like that strong desire to relieve suffering. So the question I'm asking myself, conversation to conversation, when I'm talking to people in crisis, is what does love dictate? In
Mm.
this moment, what does love dictate? Does it dictate that I listen a little more deeply? What does it dictate? Because I can tell you, a lot of times just giving people a safe space to be able to articulate their fears and their concerns and their trauma, like just giving them just an ear, right? Just letting them
Mhm.
air it out and frame it up. Sometimes when they frame it up, like they can articulate it and they feel heard. Sometimes they just kind of solve it on their own. They
Yeah.
see options they didn't see before.
Yeah.
So I'm not an expert negotiator. Obviously, there's tactics involved in that, but I think if you start with heart, like if you listen to people with the intent to understand, not to respond, that can be a very powerful analgesic.
Mm.
In my experience.
That's very good. Yes. So you've trained cops, military units, corporations, all of that. Um, who would you say actually handles it better? The stress? Would it be cops, the corporate leaders?
It's person to person. I know it sounds crazy, but like it's not like stereotypically. Like if we can overgeneralize. We could say, well, cops are better at this, and you know, corporate CEOs are better at this, and special operations folks in the military are better at this. We can generalize like that. And if you're going to talk about something like, let's say, um, you know, handling a domestic violence disturbance call, I'm going to say out of those groups, police are generally much better at dealing with that because they're training, right? It's a very
Hmm.
specific uh, situation or context. But as far as the stress, like I think it's so individualistic. Like I think the people in all those various professions that do better with it are the people that focus on the process, not the outcome. Like they focus on what they can control. They narrow their aperture and they focus specifically on the variables in the context that they have direct control over. And
Mm.
they don't worry and become preoccupied with all the things in which they don't control. Special
Yeah.
operations in the Army in particular is an example of this. The people at the highest echelon of special operations in the Army are just really good problem solvers. They're pretty nondescript in the sense that when you see movies, you'll see you'll see like these special operations people portrayed as these gigantic muscular just Adonises that you look like they could just tear the head off a bull, and they're
Yeah.
and they're all tatted up and all, and there are people like that in special operations, without a doubt. But honestly, some of the most amazing people I've worked with are so unassuming. And you look at them and you think, my gosh, this could be like somebody, an electrician coming to my house to repair something, or this could be like a salesperson at a department store. This could be like you look at them and they're almost like, wow, like I thought they would be bigger. I thought they would be more imposing. But no, what they're really good at, and this goes back to your question about stress, they're really good at solving problems. They're really good at
Yeah.
thinking unconventionally and just being able to not be limited by their perspective. They're willing to adapt, Jason. That's what people generally lack when it comes to, they don't have the flexibility to adapt. They
Mm.
get channeled in on one idea, on one perspective, on one way of framing something, and they won't let go of it. They'll die on that hill. Whereas your people that are much more comfortable at questioning their own certainty, much more comfortable at adapting as the situation changes, they're going to thrive. And a lot of those people gravitate toward those really difficult jobs. So I
Mm,
think, when it comes to stress in any of those professions, no matter who they are, it's the people that are willing to go with the flow and accept reality, to face what is actually happening instead of trying to force their paradigm onto the situation just so
mm,
they'll feel more comfortable.
yeah, that's really good. So would you say that adapting would be a major factor in what separates a good tactical unit from maybe one that falls apart under pressure?
It's probably the factor. Like if
Mm,
like you can interview 100 experts and get 100 different answers, but in my experience, it's foundational. You have to be able to yield to the truth. A consistent readiness to yield to the truth, no matter the apparent consequence, is the key factor. And that's true for tactics. It's true for life.
yeah.
If I am consistently ready to yield to the truth, no matter what it costs me, if I can do that with consistency, that is the key to being effective in everything you do. And the truth
Mhm,
is the truth. It doesn't always
mhm,
align with what I want or what I think I need, but it's always there, especially about the
mm,
truth, especially the truth about other people. And when I can yield to that, when I can account for their humanity in my decision making process, or I can look around and see that situations have changed and I need to adapt. Man, that's such a powerful way to frame challenges. It's such a
yeah.
powerful way to respond.
Can you
And
can you
I think it's foundational. I don't think it's a factor. I think it's the factor.
yeah, for sure. Can you kinda give an example, maybe elaborate a little bit on, like, finding the truth and adapting to it in an everyday life?
Yeah, well, here's one. This is just a general one. The truth about other people. So sometimes when I'm looking at people through the lens of my own self-concern. I don't see people, I see people who are useful to me maybe. I see people like tools or vehicles to get what I want, or sometimes I can see people that don't agree with me as being in my way, like they're obstacles to my goals. And if you can't help me, you can't hurt me, I might just see you as an irrelevancy, like you don't matter. So that's all of that is all an attenuation, a corruption of their reality. I'm basically projecting onto you characteristics which you do not possess and stripping you of the human characteristics that you do possess. So, what's the truth about people? The truth about people is that every single person you and I meet has hopes, needs, fears, dreams, concerns, right? We all
Mhm,
have them. That's the truth. Everyone at a fundamental level of analysis is the same. Again, what I believe, part of that part of that interconnected network, right?
mhm,
That's the truth about other people. So if I'm dealing with you and I'm seeing you as just simply being in my way, if that's how I'm experiencing you and I'm not taking into account the full range of your humanity, then I'm making decisions in a virtual reality that only exists in my head. I was
mm,
having this talk with my son at breakfast, right? My son and I were eating breakfast this morning, my older son, and we were talking about this concept. I said, it's crazy to think we're sitting here talking. We were talking about a third party. We were talking about somebody that he works with. We're having a conversation. He was kind of trying to, in his mind, trying to figure out why they were engaging in a certain behavior. And, I told him, I said, what's crazy is we're sitting here talking about this person and we've basically we're talking about one aspect or one context in which they're enmeshed, but they have a whole entire life just as rich as you and I. Like they're doing 1,000 different things. They're not just a bartender, right? They're
mm,
so much more than that,
yeah,
and they're influenced by so many, just like you and I are, right? Like their life is rich and vibrant, and it may be different in texture, but in essence, it's the same. It's the same as ours. I think it's like there's this neologism. I think it used to be a sailing term, but it's a neologism. I think the word is sonder, Sonder, and you could fact check me on that. But I think the definition is something like it's the realization that every person you meet has a life as intricately complex as your own. And once you realize that, it changes the quality of all your interactions. It changes the way you show up with every single person that you meet. And you can get more curious instead of being certain. You can get more curious about people, which can tamp down your frustration. the frustration you experience when you only see them as a means to an end or being in your way or being irrelevant. I don't know. Does that seem too philosophical? I feel like as I was
No,
riffing that, yeah.
no, man. That's I just want to pick your brain on this. You have a lot of good knowledge. I'm just trying to bring it out, so you're doing just fine.
Oh, hey, look, man, I'm on this journey with you. It's funny. I've reached a spot in my life, you get to be my age. You've read a lot of books. You've talked to a lot of people. You've had a lot of experiences, you've fallen down a bunch of times and, you get the temptation is to think you're wise.
Hmm.
The temptation is to think, oh man, I've arrived, right? I figured it out. But actually what ends up happening is you start becoming more humble. And I don't mean that I don't mean to say that in some kind of a placating way, like, oh, look how humble I am. I don't mean that at all. I could definitely work on my humility still, but I think life has humbled me. Life has humbled me. I don't think it was a choice. I think it was like if I had my right, I'd be knowing everything. But I think life has humbled me. I think I'm on this journey. I'm trying to figure it out. There are just a few things that I believe to be so true that I can't deny them any longer. And then the concept that I shared with you there about people and people being the same at some fundamental level of analysis, that's one of those things. That's a conviction I have. Just like you and your faith, right? Like I can tell you're a man of faith. Um, nobody's going to nobody's going to move you from that, right? There's nothing I can say to you. We could spend 8 days in a row talking on this podcast, and my only goal could be to convince you that, that you've misplaced your faith, right? That Jesus Christ is indeed not your savior, right? I could spend 8 days and you wouldn't budge because you're so convicted of that truth for yourself, right? Like it's not even a question for you. It's like gravity. You
Hmm.
just accept it as reality. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's where I'm at when it comes to this idea that people matter,
Hmm.
right? And that people are everybody's significant. I think I'm there. I'm convicted. I'm
Hmm.
convicted that that's true.
Hmm. Yeah. Well,
Doesn't
and I
mean that I
like.
know everything. And it's a learning though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're always learning, man. Always growing. But I like your analogy there about rooted. I'm rooted in my faith because that's our foundation, and it's everyone, has to have some sort of foundation, whether they know what it is or not. They're all rooted in something, and that is where their identity comes from. Doesn't always mean it's a positive identity. It could be negative, could be positive. It depends on um, how well they know it and where it came from. I'm sure in
Yeah.
your line of work with being a cop for so long, you have seen some pretty negative identities in people. Can you kind of think about some times or some specific situations or people that you know what they did because of where they came from and kind of what drove them?
Oh, yeah. Look, there are so many times. I'll just take gangs, for instance, right? Like, my team dealt with a lot of people
Yeah.
that were members of gangs, criminal gangs.
Hmm.
And, it used to be when I was a younger cop, I just thought, like, it was so simple to me. There are good people and bad people. The world's black and white. It's just that easy. And I'm on the team. I'm on the side of good people. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do whatever I can to, suppress the bad people to make sure they can't hurt folks. And it was just so black and white and simple to me, right? People don't have morals or they weren't raised right or they're just fundamentally flawed in some way. And that explained everything to me, which is really, it's really, that just showcases how self-deceived I was. Um, but what ends up happening? So as I talk to these gang members, I actually started spending time listening to them because, you're arresting people every day and you're spending time with them. That's a
Hmm.
process. They don't show it on the movies.
Yeah.
On the movies, you arrest them and they're gone and you're off to the next thing. But if you arrest somebody, you're going to be spending a couple hours with them, a lot of
Yeah.
times. And so, you get to talking to people and you start realizing some things. And now look, what I'm going to say, I think ultimately, and I think you would agree with me on this, Jason, I think we have agency, we have personal choice, and no matter what context we're placed in, we're ultimately responsible for what we decide to do. Fair?
Hmm.
Like, I think that's fair. I think ultimately I'm responsible for the things I decide to do.
Yeah.
But to ignore the environmental factors, the other influences on people, and their ability to withstand those influences would be naive. And so I'm talking to a gang member and I'm listening about their experiences, and I'm starting to see kind of these themes develop. And I get to ask myself, look, if you were born to a mother that was addicted to crack, you never met your father because he was in prison, you slept on the floor of your bedroom because you were afraid that a bullet might come through the wall in the middle of the night and hit you in your bed, and you couldn't make it to school with your shoes. If that was your reality, could you convince yourself that it was okay to join a gang for protection? I could get
Yeah.
there, right? I could totally look. So here's what for me, the lesson that came out of that. There's real power in trying to understand behavior, even if you can't condone it. So I'm not going to give my blessing to every gang member to go out and commit crimes because they had a rough childhood. But I am going to open up my heart a little bit and be a little bit more understanding about how those things happen. I think when people feel seen, that's the best shot they have at being able to redeem themselves or to allow themselves to be redeemed. They have to actually feel seen. I have to actually confront them as someone who cares about them as a person, even if I don't agree with the things they've done. Even if I'm the person that's actually in the moment holding them accountable for the things
Hmm.
they've done, I have to be able to do it with a heart at peace. I can't have a heart at war and expect that I'm going to change people. The only thing that does is make them more defensive. That just
Yeah.
reaffirms their justifications that the world's out to get them, and this cop's gonna here to hold me down. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And like you
once I
mentioned,
simply
sorry, I was going to say, like you mentioned, you have to give them a safe space. And that is not the safe space that they need.
yeah, brother. Look, what's so funny because, like, when we're little kids, we're taught not to judge people, right? Like, don't judge other people, right? We're taught that when we're little kids. But man, somewhere along the line, like, we just sometimes, not all of us, but some of us, I know I certainly did, we just lose sight of that valuable lesson. I start going around labeling folks and thinking I got them figured out. I just met you probably on the worst day of your life when you've committed a crime, and I think I know you,
Mm,
right? I think that's who you are in that moment. Oh, come on. Like that is the epitome of naivete. And look, I can be hard on the problem and I can be compassionate with the person. I can be hard
mm,
on the problem. You've committed a crime. We can't have that. We have to live together in a society. We have to have order in order to be able to function. If everybody did everything they want to do all the time with no consideration for anyone else, it'd just be chaos,
yeah.
right? I mean, you couldn't survive like that. We have to have consideration. So you have to have you have to be accountable when you violate that social contract. But that doesn't mean I have to judge your character. Like, what position am I in
Mm,
to judge? Matter of fact, how many people listening to this podcast would be willing to be introduced to a group of strangers by virtue of the 5 worst things they've ever done?
yeah.
Hmm? Would you?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do that, Jason? Would that be
No.
that be your intro?
No.
No, me either. I'd prefer they not know those things.
Sure.
Like it's enough that I know them. Like I think back sometimes like, oh my goodness. But my point is that we do this. I've done this. I'm guilty of this. I've had colleagues and friends that are guilty of this. Uh, it's not helpful. It makes me feel more justified for being bitter in the moment, or for feeling hatred in the moment.
Mhm.
But again, it's a violation. It's such a violation of other people's humanity, and all it does is just it has the potential to do is just drive them deeper into that box they're in, where they can just make excuses for hurting people. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, that's a long answer. Um, so many times you talk to people and you find out some stuff they've experienced, some things they went through, some trauma they've survived. Maybe all of them didn't survive it. Maybe part of them was lost to it forever. And then you start understanding more and more how they could do what they do. Things that you claim you would never do, but in reality, you've never been put in that position. I think you don't know what you would do. I think, like, until you're tested, you really don't know what you'll do. You have an idea. Now, that's another reason why I'm not a particularly religious person by practice. I've studied a lot of religion. One of my foster parents was a theology professor. I was 9 years old. I was fostered in a Bible college for 9 months, and I just became very interested in, spirituality in general. But I'm a big fan of religion. Big fan, because it gives us a frame. It allows us to have a lens through which we can better understand the human experience. And if we could really live, like, if that's your guardrail, like if that's your azimuth, let's say, for living a good life, is to love your fellow man, right? To be charitable, to be non-judgmental, to see yourself as part of a community in service of something larger than yourself. If that's your azimuth and you're trying to live along that path, oh my, right? Like, if we don't have that, I don't know how people function without it. Like if you just I don't have values. I'm just kind of, I think the truth is subjective, and I'm kind of Epicurean, not in the philosophical sense, in the colloquial sense. I'm Epicurean. I just do what I want to do when I want to do it. Damn the consequences or the impact I have on other people. If I live that way, that's so self-destructive. But if you've got some grounding, I think that's so helpful. Again, we go back to that idea of faith. I think some people, and a lot of people I dealt with in that succumbed to criminal activity, that gave themselves over to that. They just have any faith, not in themselves, not in life, not in God, not in anything. They just pretty much had just written all of that off, and they just lived moment to moment.
Yeah. Well, and again, it comes down to your foundation, because that's going to drive your purpose. If your purpose is high, you're going to set goals to achieve that purpose. But if there is no purpose, or the purpose is very low, your odds are your expectations and your morals might be low as well. So
Yeah. Well, your title of your podcast, Rebuilt.
yeah.
Right? What's that about?
Yeah.
Like that tells me something, right? What's that about?
Yeah. So it's funny because in the beginning of this, you said that I don't look like I could get in trouble. For the most part, I've stayed pretty clean. I was never arrested or anything like that. But I'm pretty vulnerable with my story. I have a pretty big history of some substance abuse, some kind of a traumatic past. I've been victim of a few things as a child, and was an alcoholic for a very long time. Made some really poor choices and went through a very bad divorce, child custody. When it finally clicked for me, I go back on faith. Yes, I am a man of faith. Jesus got a hold of me, and he did some amazing works in me. And when he really helped me out with my mental illnesses that I developed through all of this trauma, and I was able to see, this isn't who I am. I don't have to have this identity. I can choose the identity that God has for me, and I can move in that direction. And when I decided to do that, my life changed. And I educated myself on psychology and positive thinking for well over a decade. And I didn't do anything with it. I didn't even use it in my own life. But now I'm finally to a point where, that's what I need to do. I need to help other people because they're stuck just like I was. I had people along my life that helped me, but I feel drawn to those type of people because you talked about empathizing, and I empathize with them and I want to help them. And so, that's why I started my coaching program where I coach men and help them rise from a place of feeling lost and maybe some trauma, and just help them put better habits in their lives, and just set a different course. And the podcast really was kind of an afterthought for that, because I was like, not everybody needs a program. Maybe they just want some good advice. And so when I started this, it was I'm gonna get success stories of people overcoming odds and winding up successful, and then I'm gonna talk to professionals like yourself who have dealt with different things, just good advice. That's kind of, so rebuilt is specifically talking about rebuilding someone's life and all the aspects that are a part of rebuilding. So again, long answer to that question, but that's what the podcast is about.
What would you say to someone who has been traumatized and they're struggling with forgiving their abusers?
Yeah, well, that really depends on, I mean, there's a lot of aspects, because it depends on what kind of trauma it was and depends on where they are. Again, I'll always go back to the foundation, the identity, because you can't change who you pretend to be, or if you don't know who you are, you can't have a starting point. So that's the first step, is what happened? Why did it happen that way to make me who I am? And what lies do I believe because of that? So when we figured that out first, then we can start dissecting those lies and replacing them with truths. She left me, so I'm worthless. No, she left, and that's her choice. That says nothing about you. Your truth is that was her choice, and I'm going to move on with who I am because I'm better than that. But forgiveness is hard. And, going back to faith-based, Jesus says, forgive your enemies, love your enemies. It's a lot easier said than done. I have some people in my life that it's hard to forgive, and it's a daily action. It's not like, hey, you're forgiven, you're done. It's no, sometimes every day I got to forgive you again. But I think the bird's eye view on that is, when you don't forgive someone, you're essentially putting yourself in a cage and you're giving them the key of your emotions. And that's not a good way to live, because you're a grown man or a grown woman, right? You can choose how you want to live, how you handle your emotions, right? And if somebody says, well, oh, they just made me mad, right? Well, no, they didn't make you mad. You're a grown man that you chose to go to the mood they suggested. And now you're in that cage because you can't get over it, but you can. You just have to step outside yourself and choose. So I think a lot of that's with forgiveness. It's not a once all, I forgive you. It's okay. I'm not going to, I'm going to choose to not be a prisoner of that emotion anymore. And I'm going to move on with my life.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense the way you explain it. I've often felt like on my journey that holding on to hurt and blame about things that have been done to me in the past actually retarded my growth.
Yeah.
Like it's like that I was traumatized, right? But I re-traumatized myself over and over again every time I directed hate and resentment toward my abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was almost like I was reliving that over and over again. And I finally came to a place, I don't know if this is the right place or not. I think it was right for me. I came to a place where I realized that, and I'm talking about my father in particular. My father was a really, really brutal man. And like you, I make no secret of my past. But I came to a place where I realized my father was responsible for what he did to me. But I am responsible for what I do with what he did to me.
Yeah.
And what I did for years was blame him for every single bad decision I ever made in my life.
Yeah.
moving forward.
Mhm.
And the truth is, that isn't on him, right?
Yeah.
None of that's on him.
That's a
And,
powerful
and
concept
this is
too.
gonna sound well, and brother, this is gonna there's gonna be some people that might be triggered by this. Some listeners might be triggered by this. And again, I'm just sharing my truth. I'm not giving a prescription to anyone.
Right.
But the thing that set me free, this didn't happen till long after he was dead. The thing that set me free was actually I watched my dad die, years after he had abused me. I watched him die. I was the last person to be with him. And as he was dying, he asked for my forgiveness. He said he had found Christ and, he was trying to, probably get some closure. He knew he was dying. And I remember I was so nasty to him and I refused, right? I refused to forgive him. Um, and the last words he heard before he died were bitter words coming from me. And he died in front of me. And so I left and I remember thinking, man, I can finally live. I can finally be free now that he's gone, right? The world's that much lighter without him. And ultimately, he's now out of the equation. I can live. But even moving forward from that day, I just used his memory as an excuse for doing less than my best in my relationships. Like if I
Mm.
dropped the ball in my marriage or I dropped the ball with my kids, I had a ready-made excuse. Well, how can I do any better than what I'm doing given the father that I had and what he did? And I was letting myself off the hook daily. And so it wasn't until I was doing some reading, some meditating, some thinking, a lot of walking, and it wasn't until I went to his grave and I forgave him. I simply talked to him and, I said, Dad, I called him dad. I never called him dad. I always called him Vern. Call him dad. And I said, Dad, before you died, I said, you had asked for my forgiveness and I withheld that. I said, I'm here to do that. I'm here to forgive you now. I'm here to set that down. I can't carry it anymore. And this
Mm.
is the part that some of your listeners might find triggering. This is the part they might find triggering. I said, but I also need to ask for your forgiveness. I need you to forgive me. You're culpable for the abuse you heaped upon me and my siblings. You're culpable for all the neglect and the choices you made. But I am the only one responsible for what I made out of what happened to me. And what I made was a pile of excuses for hurting other people and phoning it in my most important relationships. That's on me. That's not on you. And I had no right to blame you for that.
Mm.
And I need you to forgive me for that. I need you to forgive me for that. And that act of asking for his forgiveness, which is so counterintuitive, was what actually set me free.
Wow.
It's what actually allowed me to move forward in life in such a, man, it's so amazing, the feeling. I mean, I don't know what I would equate it to. It's just like this, at the risk of being trite, it's like this 2-ton weight being lifted off of you where you feel I can move now more freely. I'm lighter,
Yeah.
metaphorically and literally. I mean, I'm lighter and it allowed me to be accountable in my relationships. I didn't stop messing up, but now I could take responsibility for my
Yeah.
mistakes. And once I owned them, to your point, this is coming full circle to your point, Jason. Once I owned them, then I could actually do something about it. I could grow.
Yeah.
I could rebuild, right? I could rebuild. And so, again, that might be triggering for some folks. And I just want to say I'm not prescribing anything to anyone. Like this is a personal
Mhm.
journey, but I felt like the bitterness that I carried in my heart was hurting me as bad or worse than the original trauma and abuse. I was keeping it alive. I was
Yeah.
like keeping it alive. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah. No, I completely, man, I agree with it, honestly. Um, and first off, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. I really appreciate you. Um, it kind of reminded me of, when I was a kid, I had somebody who hurt me, and growing up, I kind of did the same thing. I put some excuses on that person when I would mess up. Um, I have this behavior because of this trauma that you gave me, and so on and so forth. And then it kind of switched to a point of where I was like, well, you know what? You're not worth it. I'm not even going to think about it anymore because you're just
Mm.
not worth it. And matured a little bit more. And now what I think is, what you did is not right. And you should, I don't know where you are now, but I hope you're dealing with the consequences for your actions and you're not doing that anymore. But you gave me my story, regardless of negative or positive. I am who I am because of what my past is. And a lot of times people don't understand that you can use your past, you can use what happened to you in a positive way or a negative way. But regardless, it's not changing. It's already done. So what are you going to do? Which direction are you going to go? And I just chose, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to use that in a positive way and I'm going to help others who have, you know, been down that road. And I'm going to help others by being vulnerable. And I'm going to use it as a strength.
I think, uh, I think it's powerful. I read somewhere once. I cannot give you the attribution, but I can tell you it's not my original thought. I read somewhere once thinking about like I think a lot about suffering, right? This idea that like suffering is the price we pay for existence. There's a lot of the world, there's a little bit of us. We're going to bump up against it. It's going to scar us up, right? Like, you're a limited being in an unlimited universe. You're going to suffer and you just can't choose not to suffer. You can often choose how you suffer,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't choose not to suffer. And so I've been thinking about this, as I was doing this reading, again, I wish I could attribute it, but I know it's not my original thought, but it was something about God and the idea that God, being omniscient, will use whatever you choose to do to glorify him. Meaning, like you and I have free will. Again, these aren't my ideas necessarily. These are things I've been pondering on. But I mean, you have free will. You have agency. You can make choices. No one is constraining that. The only thing you have to do is live with the consequences of those choices while you're here, right, as a mortal.
Mm-hmm.
And then possibly even beyond if you believe in an afterlife, ultimate consequences. But the idea is that you have free will. You can make choice. You can do good. You can do bad. But God will turn whatever you do to his advantage. Now, I know that sounds like a crazy thing, right? Maybe not to you because you're a man of faith, but like when you say that, people are like, what? Because people ask questions all the time, like, well, if there's a God, how come babies die of cancer? Like they want to go to the babies with cancer thing. And my immediate response to that question has always been like, well, you think babies with cancer is the worst type of evil. Like that's your understanding. Like in my mind, right? It's a human being, babies with cancer, that's horrible. But in an infinite universe of all the horrible things that can happen, right? That might not be the worst thing. And people say, well, how can God let things like that happen? Well, I was reading a book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a Holocaust survivor. He survived several Nazi death camps. His family did not survive. He lost all of them, and he survived and went on to write a book and become a very, very famous therapist. And the book is titled "Man's Search for Meaning." And he popularized the idea that when you can't change a situation, you're forced to change yourself.
Mm.
Like the like someone can take everything from you except one thing, and that is your freedom to choose your response to whatever happens. No one can take
Wow.
that from you. You always are, right? Yeah. And
That
so
is
what I
good.
was thinking about was like, yeah. And I was thinking about as I'm
Oh,
reading that, and I'm thinking about this idea about God. turning everything to his advantage, meaning to glorify him. And I thought, well, okay, how do you explain the Holocaust where you've got, millions of people, Russian, Jewish people, Jewish and Russian people killed, Germans killed, millions of people. And, what's that about? And then I read this book and I'm thinking, without the Holocaust, there would not be this wisdom. There would not be all of these acts by all of these people who were tortured, this nobility that they displayed, the way we transcended that horrible time in history, hopefully to grow, and the strength and the nobility that came out of that. Now, again, would I undo that if I could? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, but at the same time, I think this is one man, Viktor Frankl, and all of the millions of people his philosophy has helped. And it all came out of this terrible, tragic circumstance. So I'm saying that to say that sometimes you and I are enmeshed in a context or a situation where, it seems senseless. It seems pointless. It seems like, better avoided, but there might be a lesson to be extracted from even the most horrible circumstances. And I don't know, again, I haven't really fully articulated this before, so kind of just riffing with you, but I think there's meaning to be found there, even in that tragedy and suffering, if we allow ourselves to, right?
Of course.
And, so I don't know, man. Again, that was a real circular, I don't know where I started or where I tried to land that plane, but, but I hope some sense can be made out of, that's the power of editing, my friend. You could just chop that up, make me sound like, some profound teacher or something. I don't know.
I might just keep this in.
You keep that in. Yeah. You don't want, I think the best, it's funny, podcasts, right? I'm not a big podcaster. I had a little podcast. I actually have a podcast now called Leading Outward. I just contribute to it. It's not my podcast. My colleagues actually, do the 99% of the work on that thing. I maybe have contributed 1%, but in that podcast and Leading Outward, and then I did another podcast with a friend. We were in business together for a little bit during COVID and after. But that was just we just started up the podcast and it ended up being pretty successful, but we didn't have a plan. I just wanted to talk to people that I thought were really interesting and cool. And that's what we did. And, but saying that to say, why am I saying that? Because I think sometimes like with you and I just kind of bantering and like the little things where you said, like maybe I lose my train of thought or maybe I misspeak. Leave it all in there, man. Cause I think that's how conversations unfold. That's how people talk. Like if you and I were sitting around having a conversation, over dinner, we would be correcting ourselves or rethinking something or misattributing something. And I think the reason people like podcasts is because it feels like you're eavesdropping on a conversation. Like you're setting in on this. It's not like entertainment. Like you and I don't have a script where we're like, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this.
Right.
We're just having a conversation and seeing where it takes us. And I bet you if someone would have asked you, hey, you're talking to Chip today, what do you guys think you talk about forgiving abusers? I bet you never would have in a million years thought we'd have gotten there, or the Holocaust, or you're just talking to some SWAT cop. You think we're going to tell like war stories.
I knew that you were more than just some SWAT cop.
Well, I don't know. I think that's enough. I think SWAT cop's enough. I think that's enough.
Okay, well,
yeah, that's enough.
Speaking of SWAT cops, though, I will say, I can't complete this episode without you telling me. I mean, you led over 2,500 operations. You've got to give me a pretty exciting story. What is one of your favorites? Something with a lot of action in it.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the deal. So I don't do this. I'm doing this for you. I don't ever do this. And there's reasons. I'll tell you the reasons first why I don't do this. One reason is that most people won't believe them. I got to be honest with you. There's some stories that I don't believe, and I was there. Like I question my own memory. Like, I saw one of my teammates today, Billy Von Wolf at Corner Cafe in Riverside. He was having, he's still on the job and he's now leading a career criminal unit. And he was having lunch with some colleagues. And I was walking out as he's walking in, and we got to talking. And when I saw Billy, I just immediately was like, man, the thing. And we just look at each other. I'll see guys on the weight pile every once in a while. Old team members on the weight pile will bump at each other. We just look at each other like we know things. Like we look at each other like we realize we know things. And it's like things we really can't really tell people because they won't really believe it, right? So one reason I don't tell the stories are because people don't believe them. And I prefer to let other people tell my stories. Like if I did something noteworthy, I prefer, maybe there's other people talking about it that's more credible. The other reason that I don't tell them is that I know I'm going to always make myself sound better than I was. Like in my memory, right? Oh yeah, I wasn't scared. Or in my memory, like I was like, I didn't make any mistakes, right? I don't want to ever give anybody the idea that, I'm some kind of a movie hero or something. No, I mean I'm a mixed
Okay,
bag. I mean
well,
I
as you
got
tell the story, I promise to be judgmental and take it with a grain of
all
salt for you,
right.
okay?
You've been very patient. That's a lot of preamble. You've been very patient. So but don't you dare edit that preamble out. That's important
Okay.
preamble. All right. So okay, I'll just give you one. One of this is kind of movie-ish in a way. One of the things that we did on our SWAT team was that we provided overwatch on high-risk tactical operations. So we have a career criminal unit that would target and surveil career criminals. So one time we had that. Well, we did this more than once. We did this a lot, several times. But this was one of those times. The career criminal unit identified a recently paroled bank robber who was getting the old crew back together. He was building a robbery crew. And they identified through informants that he was asking around about a crew. They put a surveillance on him. I mean, they had plane. They had GPS. They had, right? I mean, people don't know. They have monitoring cell phones. They're doing all of these things. I can't even tell you about some of the things they're doing because it's still classified. But let me just tell you, it's harder to be a criminal these days, FYI. Once they get on you, it's really hard to get away with it. So they're on them, and they're watching them for months. And he's getting the crew together. They're watching them do burglaries where they're stealing guns. Just watching them, right? Not intervening. They're watching them steal cars and tarp them up. Hide the stolen cars, right? They're watching them do that. So they're committing multiple felonies, and they're watching them. Well, we're there in tactical overwatch in case we have to intervene. Like if they were to hit a house that was occupied, or if they were to steal a car and somebody tried to stop them. So we were watching. Well, they did all this, and then we're watching them case banks. They would case a bank all day. We would be casing the bank with them. We would be set up on overwatch. I might put a couple snipers on a roof, to watch and report back, observe and report. And we're spread all through neighborhoods and watching. And this goes on. This is the non-sexy part, by the way. This goes on for 3 months. And they narrow it down to 2 banks. And it's going to be one of these 2 banks. And they start gearing up. We got, they have wires on their phones. They're listening in. They all meet at this location. They get 2 stolen cars and a clean car. And they all get dressed up in these jumpsuits, and they've got like these COVID masks, and they've got automatic rifles. They've got the whole 9, and they jump into the stolen cars and the clean car, and they're making their way toward the bank. And we're following them. And we didn't know at one point, like, which bank are they going to? Well, we finally determined, they're going to this bank. They're going to cross the state line and go to the bank right over on the Kansas side. We're like, okay, so we're following them. Surveillance is right on top of them. We're back a ways, and a Kansas Highway Patrol trooper checks the tag or the car. The tags have been switched on the stolen car, the lead stolen car. He checks the tag. You can tell he did it. He checked the tag, and he starts maneuvering to get in behind them to stop them. We can't have them stopping them. So our undercover cars are boxing the trooper out, so he can't get behind them. And then I'm on the phone calling KHP going, got to get this trooper off this highway. Tell this trooper to back off this car, because they're noticing that he's noticing them. And I'm like, this the trooper took the next exit. And then we're like, okay, we're back in business. So we don't want to get them spooked, right? Well, so they go and we determine they're going to this bank. I send one squad ahead of the robbers, ahead of the convoy. They get ahead, and they go into the bank, and they immediately take all the employees and put them in the vault. And they clear all the customers out, and they lock the front doors. And then they're inside. The SWAT team's inside with the employees safely in the vault, and the SWAT team's inside waiting. And then here comes the robbers. They dump the clean car behind a Home Depot. They get in the two dirty cars, the stolen cars, and they convoy over to the bank. They pull up to the front of the bank. They jump out, rifles, jumpsuits, masks, and they move to the front doors in formation. This is like organized, right? They've done this before. And they're trying to get into the doors, but the doors are locked. And they look at each other like just astounded. And about this time, one of the tertiary surveillance cars jumps the berm and T-bones the getaway car, the lead getaway car, just demolishes it. Parts flying everywhere. We pop out of the bushes. We pop out from behind dumpsters. We got guns up on them. We're getting them on the ground. They don't know what's happened. There's a lot of screaming and slow singing. We get everybody in custody. And this one guy's trying to say something, right? And so one of my guys, I'll call him Dave because that was his name. He pulls his mask back. He goes, yes, sir. And he goes, well, what's going on? What's going on? What's happening? And Dave says, well, sir, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit bank robbery. He says, bank robbery? I was just going to open an account. And Dave doesn't miss a beat. Dave says, well, I'll make sure you get your toaster. Puts his mask back on, and we load him up into the FBI car, and they take him over for interrogation. So that was one story. I like that story. No shots fired. Everybody was it was very precise, very nobody had to get hurt. Very well planned, but yeah, definitely worthy of. When you saw that car fly over the berm and T-bone that getaway car, I mean, I'll never forget that sound. I'll never forget that collision, and I'll never forget the look on those guys' faces. Can you imagine being surrounded by a SWAT team you can't see? Like, you think you're doing one thing, you think you're doing one, you're involved in a whole other thing.
Wow. That is the story.
Yeah.
Somehow when you mentioned that state trooper, I knew that was going to happen in that story somewhere. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Oh, I was saying, that's how I remember it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, but FYI, that's the disclaimer. That's how I remember it. When you tell a story, people should know this. They probably do know this, but people that don't know this need to hear it. When you tell a story, when I remember a story, I'm not remembering the story. I'm remembering the last time I told the story. It's like it's a perpetual game of telephone. That's why you got to be careful with stories. That's why I write things down. Because at the end of the day, like when you and I are talking and you're remembering a memory, you're not remembering the time. You're not actually remembering the event. You're remembering the last time you remembered the event.
Yeah.
And this is a well-documented phenomenon in memory. So another reason that I kind of eschew war stories is you never know if you're getting the skinny. But if you're a journaler, you strike me as a journaler. If you're a journaler, you write things down. Like if you want to remember it, memorialize it. Then the problem is when you go back sometimes and read it, you'll be like, is that really what happened? Like you've got to defer to the written record, man.
Yeah. I like to write down my goals every morning and how I'm feeling and just different emotions. And what I like to do from time to time is go back a year and be like, well, what were my goals this time last year? Oh man, those are so trivial at this point. Or, oh, I actually thought that way, or, whatever. Or that problem I had, I remember that. I was torn up about it. That wasn't a problem, and it really just helps you rise, level up in life, doing it that way. So, but,
yeah, I think you're onto something. I think you're onto something, man. I think you're I think with your faith, I think you're on to something. I think you're on to something. And I think you got onto it early in life. I think you got really lucky. And
Mm,
that isn't undermining all the hard work you've done to become the man you are. I'm not taking that away from you, but I think there's some good fortune there. I think you got on a path early enough that you're going to be able to help a lot of people, Jason. I think, and you're going to be able to love people unconditionally in ways that I don't think you would have been able to do had you not found God and
yeah.
uh and let Christ do that work in your life. I think like it's very impressive. And I don't mean it's impressive in the sense that you're trying to glorify yourself so much as I think it's impressive that you can own your own destiny. You can actually
Mm,
decide this is who I want to be. I want to be a force for good. I want to help
yeah.
people. I want to share my story, not to in a self-aggrandizing way, but so I can help other people. I think, look, man, you would never say this about yourself. You're appropriately humble, but I can say this about you as an objective observer. Thank you for being willing to do that, and thank you for just having a chat with me. I'm just a guy. I appreciate being able to come on and just chew the fat with you.
Oh, I appreciate you, Chip. You've been great, man. I've really enjoyed this. Real quick before we get off the episode, though, um, what do you got going on in your life right now? What's next for you? Where can people get a hold of you? All that.
Yeah, so I'm on the LinkedIn. I'm not supposed to say the, am I? Just LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also old. FYI. Uh, I I'm also when I was a kid, find your friends meant go find your friends. Like you had to
Right.
literally hunt them down. Where are their bikes? Uh,
Yeah.
so, but I'm on LinkedIn. I try to look at LinkedIn once every couple days. I post on LinkedIn
Mhm.
fairly regularly. Uh, and that's easy. Get a hold of me there for sure. Um, and also, my website is www.arbinger, arbinger.com. If you want to put that in the show notes, it's
Yep.
arbinger.com.
Yes.
That's always a way as well to get in
Okay.
touch. And as far as what's going on, just trying to kind of figure out like with everything going on in the world right now and the speed at which information travels and misinformation travels, what's the best way to convey to people the necessity for injecting humanity back into the conversation? How do we take into consideration the people around us? We get so caught up in all of it's like I don't know if they call it the rat race or what they call it, but people are moving at 100 miles an hour. We're just
Yeah.
overlooking one another. We're looking past one another. It's like, how do we help people appreciate the importance of every single contact they have with every single person? That's my goal. I think I'm a
Yeah.
retired guy, retired once anyway. And
Yeah.
before I retire the second time, I want to feel like we move the needle on that a little bit. And so that's
Yeah.
that's kind of what I got going on now. We'll see where it takes us.
That's good, man. Living in the moment, noticing the moment in the moment is big. Yeah. That's a great
Yeah,
reminder.
huge. Well,
Awesome.
I'm glad we got to
Well,
spend these moments together here. This was a
yeah.
gift.
Me too. Thank you so much, Chip. Again, I really appreciate your time, appreciate your friendship and your knowledge. And man, we'll have to do this again sometime.
All right, my friend.
All right. Take care. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed today's guest. And I just wanted to say that if this has made you think, if this has sparked something in you, maybe about your purpose or your relationship with God, I just want to encourage you to not let that moment pass. If you're ready to take that next step and connect with me personally, you can reach out to me through my email, which is jason@rebuiltlifecoach.com, or you can go to my website at www.rebuiltlifecoach.com. And if you're serious about building a stronger, faith-driven life, please go check out that program. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep walking in purpose and growing in faith. I'll catch you next time.